right, and welcome back to the show a few weeks later. If you are curious about being a solo filmmaker and interested in doing a podcast or actually having some kind of filmmaking career, throw your wallet away and use the remaining money to buy a camera, and then you'll have some idea of what it's like to be some kind of indie filmmaker. You're broke, but you have a camera. I have Mark Laird. I was so confident
you got
with
it,
that
man.
too.
Laird, you got it.
We were getting there. So Mark Laird on the podcast. He's an actor, businessman, entrepreneur, owner of the sweetest dogs I've ever seen.
Oh man!
And we worked on a project together recently with quite a few other actresses. You did a wonderful job with your expressions.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, right.
And
a lot
everything.
of expressions. Yeah.
I think what the best part of what you did on set that day was like you did so much minimal stuff, but every reaction you did was hilarious. Like you barely said a word. You were not the main actor by any way, by any means. But every time we cut to you, it was hilarious. So like professional actor over here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how to act, so he's better than me at it.
Oh, geez, man. Great introduction to me. You talk very highly of me. I so appreciate it, man.
Thank you. So don't screw this up.
Great.
Okay, so you've been doing this for a while. You've been pursuing acting for a while, I assume. So what is something that you have I guess not really a career path, but like a form of acting that you've kind of settled into? Because I feel like after doing this for a while, people figure out what they're comfortable with and just kind of settle into that.
That's a great question. So I, like you're saying, when you get into acting, if you're lucky enough to go ahead and go to school or get a teacher or coach that's coaching you on how to do it, there's different kind of schools of acting. You hear about Meisner, you hear about method or whatever, and everybody kind of comes from Stanislavski. Yeah. And then, you go into the old schools of what, like I said, Meisner, Strasberg, all these other really iconic coaches were, and they all have kind of their own method. And you kind of pull stuff from that. There's Chekhov is another one. And you kind of pull stuff from that. But as you do it, so I believe, art is not something that really can be taught. You can basically pick up a book or a formula or something like that and look at it and basically glean some stuff from it. But it's really practical application that gets you better.
There needs to be like some inherent talent there and like a desire, but obviously like practice makes perfect.
Right, but it's like painting, right? You can go to an art class and they can teach you a little bit of stuff and stuff like that, but it's really you doing it and failing and failing and failing and failing. Samuel Beckett, he's a playwright, and he might have acted as well, but he has a great quote. It's like fail again, fail better. It's like you just keep failing, and then sooner or later you kind of grow out of that. It's just trial and error. It's just like it's the same reason why both in, I guess, Elizabethan times, this is pretty nerdy of me, but in Elizabethan times or whatever, Dude,
there's a Godzilla poster over here. Don't talk to me about nerdy.
I saw that. That's great, dude. But it's the same token that in Elizabethan times, actors were referred to as players. The same token that sports basically players are. Yeah. So we're both, these two different kind of professions, but we're both referred to as players in that way, in the sense that we're just playing and trying constantly to get better and better and better at what we're doing. Yeah. So going back to your original question, so after you do it
that was a wonderful segue into what you're going to say. That was beautiful.
Oh, thanks, man. So after you do it for so long, you find out kind of what works for you and what your instrument kind of entails. That's kind of like a nerdy, kind of like snobby way to go about it, but it's very common in the industry when you refer to your instrument or what kind of like makes you feel things. Because at the end of the day, the pursuit of acting is basically you're manipulating your own reality, your own perception, where the thing that you're doing is not real in that moment. But you're trying to affect yourself in such a way that your body doesn't realize it. Your mental state for a brief moment does not realize it. So either you can come at it from two ways. A lot of people will come out the English way, or I say English, it's a very broad way to say it, but a lot of British actors will come at it from the outside-in technique, where if they affect their body in a way, it will inform the mental. So they can put themselves in a mental state by portraying their body or playing the behavior very specifically and just letting their
Kind of sounds like
behavior
method
influence.
acting.
In a different way. In a
Yeah.
way. For sure, that's part of it. Method acting, I think, is to the extreme. And then Inside Out is much more of an American technique where you put yourself in a mental state. That's where like you get with, I guess, goes back to kind of Brando, where he would draw all this drama and trauma that affected him as a kid, or other actors will do that will bring up and inform themselves mentally to get themselves in the scene. That it's in a vein of like substitution, I guess. But it will inform themselves mentally to kind of manipulate their behavior. So you can see the difference. So you would either go outside in, which is messing with behavior first to inform the mentality, or you inform the mentality first, and then that affects your behavior.
See, I didn't know like overseas that kind of thing differs, because I've definitely seen actors in America get in that mental headspace, which is like, as being an actor, like that's something like incredibly impressive for me, because I can remember that kind of stuff, but like drawing like a legitimate emotional reaction. I remember I worked on a short film with Amber. I think his name was Paralysis, and she needed to, obviously we got to the scene where she needed to emote a lot, like tears and everything.
Okay, so
so what happened was the director went to her, brought her to the back of the room, and they just had a conversation, and she just came back out, and all the director, Caitlin, she just said, like, she's preparing. And then Amber walked out, like 10 minutes later. And when she walked out, it was like sadness incarnate. Like, oh, okay, she's ready. Like, don't talk to her.
Don't mess with her. Yeah,
like we're gonna do this scene, and she freaking killed it. Like, I think I might need to show you that scene eventually, because man, she freaking murdered that scene. I actually go back and watch that scene over and over again, because she had such like a raw emotional reaction,
visceral
to
reaction.
Like whatever you thought of in there. Like, she killed it. And like after the scene was done, she was like still an emotional wreck. It's like, how in the do you get in that mindset? And you have to stay in that mindset, and then even after the scene is done, you're still in that mindset because you clearly like took some time, took some thought, and like, I am sad, and it is impressive to me.
Yeah, and it's going back. It's not necessarily exclusive to like British or American or whatever. Everybody has their own way of doing it. It's just, I think when it first came about, or the first thing, the common connection was that usually outside in was more of like how it was taught in school-wise in British theater versus American theater, where it had come up because we're so much newer of a country, right? And newer in acting. So, with the icons we had, the Meisner, the Strasberg, all that stuff, they were much more of a mental first versus the outside in. I keep digressing. I think I'm
Could
kind
you
of answering.
turn the mic a little closer to your face? No,
yeah. I keep digressing because I think I'm not entirely answering the question you had, where you were saying like, what thing do you?
I think you evolved my question.
What thing do you kind of do? And it's really so. I think I've just found something that works for me in the way that I kind of prep. A lot of it is the easiest thing, and it's both deceptively easy to say, but hard to kind of like get it in your bones.
Yeah, is
know the lines, right? It's that simple. It's like
you are now my favorite person to work with, because I've worked with so many people that had just come on set.
Yeah,
they've had the script for weeks on end.
Yeah,
and they're constantly like, feed the line. Like, you've had the script for weeks. What do you mean?
And there's nothing more frustrating, because you're trying to. The whole goal of acting is to maintain presence, right? To work yourself where nothing, you're not realizing anything outside of the bubble between you and your other scene partner, or you and the other actors within the scene.
Right.
And so you have to be completely present. You can't do that if you're thinking about your next line. You can't do that if you're thinking about a line in general. It has to be just completely in your body at that point. And you have to ride the emotional roller coaster of what the character is going through within that moment, within the script. A great way to think about it is, I used to get really heady with it and think about that there's a person that's alive that lives in that script, and it's my job to let that person possess me for that brief amount of time. So that's kind of weird and out there. I used to think about that, in college or what have you. I studied acting in college, and that's how kind of like I was looking at it a lot. But yeah, as I've gone through it over the years, it's just there's definitely things that I have held on to where I just read the script over and over again until so it's not so much me. It's different than auditioning. Auditioning is a different skill. It's me just learning lines or whatever it is and then kind of regurgitating them in a way that I'm making a choice and sticking to it in an audition. But when I've got the part and I'm trying to play this character, it's me reading the script and then filling in a lot of the history behind what happened previously with that character.
Yeah, what if this happened? And
exactly.
What happened in this scenario? What happened if these two characters like went in the back room? What happened if they conversed and talked like that?
Yeah,
like the kind of like behind the scenes that the actor would know, but like no one behind the scenes or like who's watching the film would even consider.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
If you have a tense moment, that's especially at the very beginning of the movie where you have, that we're starting here and that's kind of where the movie's going, but there's already some established history between these other two characters.
Yeah,
it's your job as the actor to fill in that history, right?
For sure.
You have to understand where that came from, and really the most important thing for me is relationships. It's something that.
Now, are you talking about relationships with like the people that are actually portraying the characters, like the actors on set?
No, the relationships of my character with the other character.
Oh,
okay.
So,
that's the most important thing, and it's often, you can get trapped, or at least I do. Every now and then I'll catch myself where it's like, oh my gosh, this is 101. Like, of course, why haven't I been doing that? Because there's so much that you're doing, or at least that I feel like I'm doing or trying to do. And then I will forget, like, duh.
But you're also portraying a different person, and you're trying to, like, put your own mental capacity into this new person.
Of course. But it's usually how I find out that I've missed something like that is, for instance, I get to an emoting scene, right, where I have to either cry or, truly portray anger, or I think one of the truest, the hardest emotions to play is true bliss. Because, it's...
Why is that?
True bliss, I think, and maybe I'm very perceptive when I watch it or something like that. I just don't want it to come off as forced. Like if you have a forced laugh or something like that. True laughter, where you actually think of something is funny in that moment. It's really hard to do, at least for me.
And it can be really hard to replicate. Especially if you have a director who's on the other side of the camera, like, all right, take two. I'm like, got to do that again.
Right. But hopefully, everything is running so smoothly. You only have to do, maybe 4 to 6 takes or whatever it is,
Which is why I feel like a lot of people, and I realize I'm interrupting you, I apologize.
No, not at all.
Which I realize that's a lot of people that don't give like actors who are in front of a camera enough credit, because like stage actors, and I'm not discrediting stage actors in any way, shape, or form, their emotion in the scene is continued for a longer period of time, so they're in that character for a longer period of time.
Right.
If you're like on set, you have 6,000 things that are in your face, a boom mic, a camera, a light, something that's right here. Maybe you're in a position that the director said stay in that is just unnatural for you or your character to be in, but you need to be in it for the shot. And then not only all of that stuff is happening around you, but you need to continue to like be in the same mindset that character is in that scene with all this crap and people like looking at you. I mean, it's kind of the same as people like an audience staring at you when you're on stage, but it's also... It's like it's a weird repetition. And like I'm saying this not as an actor. I'm not an actor. Don't ever hire me as an actor. That's a bad idea. But like I've noticed that, and I've always like thought like that kind of like repetition in your head and that kind of like I guess stable mindset that you kind of need to have to like remain in character even when the director is saying cut and like we're resetting, here's some makeup, and do the same thing again, but with the same freaking mindset.
For sure. I love you articulated it really well. I love I think it all goes back to preparation. If you're prepared enough, it's much easier to just maintain that mental headspace and to maintain where you want to go with the character if you're prepared. If you're not prepared, or worst case scenario, you think you're prepared and then you get there and you're hitting bumps to try to maintain that mentality. It's because you find out that you weren't as prepared as you thought. And so it goes back to preparation. You just have to be as prepared as possible to get there. Even then, some things are just really difficult to do. Like on the day of, they rewrite the lines in the scene, or on the day of on the day of
I've never been able to do that at all. I've rewritten an entire ending one day.
Really?
I did. I actually like in the
calling audible. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Like Peter, Abigail, like y'all would know about this.
Yeah.
Ground Zero, the short film that that I completed recently. The ending changed freaking all the time, and to my own personal fault a little bit. But just because the original ending that we had shot just didn't fit the tone or the pacing, and so like we're cutting this and we're reshooting it, and then it changed freaking 7 times on the day or the weekend we did, and we just like continually rewrote it with the actors, and at some point like the actors just kind of made their own lines and just kind of figured out their own movements and figured out the
it with
scene.
the through line of the story.
We kind of figured out the scene, and like with that actually became my favorite thing to shoot, because these 2 actors and the director were like, all right, let's just kind of figure out how this goes, and we shot it, and like it became my favorite thing to shoot, because I figured out it was just fun to work with actors and to figure that out, to figure out how we're going to be doing this, how they're going to be moving, how they're going to be talking, where they're going to be looking, and that kind of stuff. Like that was fun. It wasn't as planned out. It was just, let's kind of feel the scene from the actor's perspective.
I love that. I love that you incorporated the actors. It's so much harder when it's their actors are not kind of part of that, and then you get those new, the new sheets of the day, and you see those, and it's like, oh, I prepped for this whole thing, especially when it's a dialogue heavy scene.
Oh yeah,
it's like, oh man, well I only have a couple hours. This is not going to be as embedded. The worst thing is you might be thinking about your next line in it, or you might just be like, sorry, in the middle, not in the middle, but obviously ad-lib your way through it, and at the after cut be like, what was I supposed to be saying? It's the worst. It's just, you feel very unprepared, which is not a very good place that you want to be as an actor. But I love that you did that. I think the Duplass brothers are famous for doing that in a lot of their movies.
Yeah, I wish I knew what they were. Yeah.
Well, I think I watched one recently. It was a black and white film, beautiful film. It was with, I believe it's Mark Duplass, and it was called something Cafe or Blue Jay Cafe or Blue. It's on. I think it was on Netflix.
I think I actually might know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think I might.
Yeah.
I probably don't. But
it's with Sarah Paulson, I believe that's the actress's name. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're gonna have to show me.
Okay, yeah, I'll show you after. But yeah, some movies are like that. Really come together really well, and they're beautiful. And it's
do you work good with spontaneity, or do you need that preparation?
I love prep. I do, especially when it's like a heavier thing. Like if I'm doing there's just a lot of trust, and there's got to be a really good. I find that if I'm doing spontaneity, especially with the through line of a script, the prep is different in the sense of like knowing, you have to know your character well, but instead of knowing lines, it's really about the trust with that other actress or other actor.
Yeah,
and so you guys have to be willing to catch each other all the time and understand that the ultimate goal is this. We're getting there, but while we're getting there, like we need to going through this conflict or going through what's the thing of the scene that we're trying to get through. Yeah. And then it makes it a lot easier. But, there's things that complicate because obviously you're working in tandem with the director as well, and you have to have a really trusting relationship with the director.
Yeah.
So that, you're not messing up a shot or with your movement or doing something like that. Because obviously when you're doing an improv thing like that, you're going off feeling. So, you're like, I have an instinct to do this. You want to trust it because it's spontaneous and you want to give a great performance.
Right, but
you
maybe it won't be in line with like what the director needs or the cinematographer needs. I think the importance can't be overstated, like working with people that you freaking trust and that you want to work with, because I feel like there's a creative process that everybody has, and if you interrupt that creative process, sometimes it could be frustrating for some people, but if you know and if you trust that director, it is like, I know what you're trying to go for, and I trust you, I'm going to go for that. Or like if you trust the actor, it's like, you know what, the character, you're in all the character inside and out, like I'm going to trust you to kind of deliver the dialogue in the scene and just like hand it over. Like that, like I guess that kind of trust can't be overstated, and that's personally why I like working with people that I know and trust, because I've had that situation where I've worked with actors who are great, but I just we don't have that same like working relationship, and it just doesn't bounce as well, and the scene could have been so much better if this was better.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, totally makes sense. Yeah. So I have a question. I immediately was like, oh man, I really want to ask this question. It's been in the back of my head. So, actor, filmmaker, lovers of film. First of all, what are your favorite films? What are your favorite genres, and how'd you get into film, man? This is something we haven't really talked about.
I think like for a while, I don't. Why is this hard? I think for a while, like there's always been like a distinction of like the movies that I like the best.
Yeah.
But I can never really I don't think I can actually really say like this is my favorite movie of all time, because it always like my mood's always changing, and like I'd rather watch this movie today. I'd rather watch this movie today. So I really never want to say like what's my favorite, like, but the movies that I've always consistently watched, it's just my own personal taste, and I find it's like a weird mix of weird genres and stuff like that. Because I'm a huge nerd. I love your Star Wars. I love your DC, like your Batmans, your Supermans, like all that kind of stuff. Like I love me some nerdage, but I also like straight up like Empire Strikes Back and Revenge of the Sith. Those two movies are like my favorite Star Wars movies and two of my favorite sci-fi movies. But I also love movies like Pride and Prejudice. That's how big of like a jump that goes. Like I love Pride and Prejudice.
Dude, honestly, Pride and Prejudice might be up there, and I'll tell you why. If you I didn't want to
by
interrupt
all
you.
freaking means.
Okay, so this is me again. I'm a nerd for acting, but Donald Sutherland at the end of the movie. So we talked about bliss is a really hard thing to play.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where, when you're a great actor, you're not acting, you're just living it. And so Keira Knightley's character comes in.
Which, by the way, 10 out of 10, Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
Side note, please continue.
Yeah, agreed. But she comes in to see her father.
Yeah.
And, he realizes that she's in love, and he's so happy for her from a father's perspective. And he kind of, he emotes in that scene, or, what he's living brings him to kind of experience something so beautiful and so wonderful. You can sense the care and love he has for his daughter in that scene through his reaction. And it is so powerful, and as a viewer you empathize with it so well. There's so much catharsis coming from that. And that moment, aside from, you have incredible performances, and I'm a sucker for period pieces, by the way.
Oh my gosh, from everybody, and is beautiful.
It's just a beautiful film. But I mean, that moment for me is like, when they think of movie magic, right? We grew up with this term, movie magic. That was one that, aside from like directing or cinematography, for acting for me, that was an element of movie magic for me. And in the same token that, have you seen Meet Joe Black?
Yes.
Okay.
That's actually one of my dad's favorite movies.
Amazing film. I know, I've heard in the past Brad Pitt is kind of ashamed of his performance or whatever it is.
Oh, shut. He shouldn't be.
Yeah,
he's playing death.
Exactly.
It's going to be a little weird.
Yeah, but exactly. But it's a spectacular film. If anybody hasn't seen it, you need to watch it. But there's a moment, movie magic moment again for me, where Anthony Hopkins' character and Brad Pitt's character are on this, I guess, rise or bluff overlooking this fireworks show.
Yeah.
And everything culminates. These two actors are beautifully shot and silhouetted with everything. And this is just an example of, aside from acting, it's just like the picture, the painting that was created in that frame. It's like, dude, how do you not enjoy like movies and film like that? It was just so inspiring. It's like those moments are incredible. And, and I think recently, I don't know how you feel, but more and more, I'm just getting more and more impressed by like cinematographers and lighting designers of what they're coming up with. Dude,
obviously with the technology boom and the things, the equipment that we have to work with obviously has changed. But like cinematography really has like that's such an important role now. And it's like, I don't know how to say it other than just it's really, really, really improved.
Yeah.
I guess part of the negativity of that, to part of a point where a lot of it looks the same and a lot of it kind of melds together. But again, like a lot of the cinematography that stands out is like the cinematography of Sicario any of the Coen Brothers movies with the cinematographer, like, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. But if you're a filmmaker, you know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
His movies always have that distinct feeling. I think there's a need to stand out with cinematographers now and to make your films feel a certain way. That's obviously in line with the movie, but obviously stand out in a way like it's different from like your Netflix movies, which look great, but and like very colorful. Yeah. Roger Deakins, that's his name.
Yeah, Deakins, Lubetsky, I think that's another one.
Lubetsky,
really
like
big.
my freaking wide angle, like that man sleeps with his wide angle lens, I swear. But like to completely go back into a side note, because I'm thinking of 6 billion things at once.
Yeah, no, please.
I think one of the things that will really like hinder you to a movie, not hinder you to a movie, that's the wrong way to say that. Kind of latch you onto a movie, like me with Pride and Prejudice, is like scenes that kind of stand out to you and like speak to you emotionally. Like the character of Elizabeth in that movie, she says she likes to go on walks. And like throughout the entire movie, you see just like really beautiful wide angle shots of her like just walking across the field, thinking to herself. Like the opening shot is her just reading a book and walking. That's it. And like to me, as a person who's a bit of an introvert and likes to like time by myself, I like going on walks personally, like morning walks, night walks, like stuff like that. Like that personally like speaks to a bit of nostalgia for me. And like I love seeing those shots of just her walking. That's kind of a weird thing to say. Like I just like those scenes of her just being alone, not talking, walking. That kind of like resonates with me, and like again why that movie kind of like has a soft place in my heart.
Yeah.
So, and obviously I love romance movies. I love period piece movies, and that movie just like clicks on every level. And again, the acting's great, the cinematography is great. The director who directed another one of my favorite movies, The Darkest Hour, Churchill movie. He's a wonderful director. Like that movie,
I didn't
just
know he
clicks.
directed The Darkest Hour.
It's so good. Like I've again another period piece, World War II period piece.
Gary Oldman
movies.
at his best.
Freaking
the practical makeup is ridiculous.
Absolutely insane. You would not know that was Gary Oldman in any way. For like, it's incredible. Like opening introduction to Gary Oldman is freaking legendary, and I love seeing the sizzling bacon when they're preparing it. And again, anyway, it's just gorgeous. Quick, were you going to say something? Because I have a question for you.
Yeah, no, I've got some questions, but keep going. Yeah.
Ooh, you have questions for me. What has been your least favorite experience on a film set? Let's just go from pure negativity now.
I have two. So one was I was shooting a film, and it was a young director, and it was very early in like just acting for me. I had just gone to LA, and I was basically like, I need to work. I'm here. I'm enamored by everything around me. And also it was like I didn't have any friends yet. Social anxiety was a huge thing because it's a totally new city, new culture, everything like that. So I was basically just, jumping at any opportunity that hit my way.
The experience bubble is like, hey, if you work on this project, you'll get some experience. Like, experience pays my bills. Thank you. But yeah. And
so I took this small gig for a young filmmaker, and he was playing. It was like an addict role, so a very heavy role, and we were shooting in this like just rundown, really rundown complex. Like the apartment we were in was dilapidated to be sure, but like the units, like to the sides of us were just like there was where a wall should have been was no wall, and it was just exposed to like nature.
Solid.
So it was an incredible set. Like what a wonderful like location. And so the movie was shot in black and white, which was really cool. And anyway, there's this moment where I had gone to this AA meeting and had developed a relationship with this other character, and she was there, and I have this moment in this bathroom where I am kind of deteriorating from the drugs I was using. I can't remember what it was, but because it was so long ago, but I remember the makeup artist had applied like a fake nail to me, and it was basically my fingers were rotting, like my fingernails.
That's freaking sweet.
Yeah. And so I was looking in the mirror, and I basically peeled off this nail, and it was like me kind of the last shred of humanity for the character was being peeled off as well. And so then the other side character comes in, and she just attempts to comfort me, and I lash out at her. And I go from lashing out to literally crumbling by this toilet that's covered in just whatever it is. And she comes over to console me, basically, and I'm basically groveling at her. It's
You're
almost
doing a
like,
really good job at selling this movie, by the way.
Oh, well, thanks. It's kind of like, in A Marriage Story where Adam Driver lashes out and then immediately kind of gets over it.
Immediately
and
crumbles.
And Scarlett Johansson kind of consoles him. Very similar to that from my memory of it. And so, very intense scene. This is all backdrop, but it's a very just intense scene. It's basically the big pivotal moment for this character. So we start shooting this scene, and I've obviously, feeling whatever I'm supposed to be thinking. I've done prepped, and it's just a very emote scene. So I go from basically normal to breaking full down to crumbling to her consoling me and like just kind of ending the scene. And, in one of those scenes, you don't want to do it too many times because you don't want to exhaust the fuel that you have as an actor. So we do it, but because of the inexperience of the set, it was like the first take was fine because there was, a plane, hold for plane, whatever it is. And then the next take, it was just like someone was like laughing in the back. And I was like, dude, okay. And then
Shut up, please.
Yeah. But this proceeded to happen 2 more takes of me doing this at different points. Not necessarily laughing, but someone like talking or, hey, the boom's in the shot or something like that. And that's fine, but it's like after I had done it, I felt like on the 4th or 5th take, I was starting to exhaust the fuel that I had, and it was a lot to ask in that scene, right?
Oh yeah.
And so that was frustrating, and the director at the time was not aware of, like, he was just kind of oblivious of like what was going
younger
on.
director,
very young.
Okay.
So maybe like early 20s,
Yeah. Something to prove.
Yeah, and so I was like, man, I'm doing this. I can't, and I was getting frustrated. It's not that I couldn't, but I was saying that in my head, I was like, man, these takes are not as good as these other takes I just had. And it's you're fighting this battle of trying to maintain, presence as well as like as good as you could possibly
the emotion
give.
that you just had, like that's some pretty freaking deep emotion. You got to stay in that mindset.
Yeah. And
freaking boom operator Dingo is just like,
yeah,
hey.
And it's one of those things that, when at that point in time, I'm sure that a lot of the set, it seemed like, half of them were somewhat there because they wanted to be there to be as professionals, and then the other half were just friends he had pulled to do it as you do in guerrilla filmmaking. And so, that was very frustrating in the sense that like he was not aware of what was going on. I could feel that my frustration was also starting to get in the way of the character. I was, trying to do my best here, and at the end of the day, I felt like what I gave was inferior to some of the takes that, obviously were kind of impeded.
Yeah.
And I was just so frustrated because the relationship I had with that director went so downhill over the course of that scene because he was not helpful, wasn't trying to control the set, wasn't trying to like help at all with the scenario, didn't appreciate the difficulty of the task that was given. And also I was just kind of like, this is the big moment of your film, man. This is the moment. This is the coup de grace for you.
Take it seriously.
Like you need, do you want this to be successful or not? Like,
there needs to be some investment here.
Exactly.
And like, there's going to be people who just don't get like how that mindset works. Like you're an actor, just do it again.
Yeah.
But obviously like that's going to be different for you being in that mindset of that character. People won't get it. Like there are set people, and like obviously like if you're an indie filmmaker, you're going to be using free labor, friends and everything. Of course.
I've done it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, totally. Like if it's going to ruin the freaking scene if everyone, I guess there needs to be like a mood or like an understanding on set. Like, yo, we're shooting something heavy. Silence. Let's not talk about anything right now because this guy needs to be in the moment because if we need to make this moment right because this needs to be able to translate on film. Like, well, let's make the audience cry. Let's do this, and for that to happen, everyone take it seriously. Yeah. Give the silence on set. Give this actor some time to emote.
Yeah. Agreed. So that was kind of a low point at the very beginning, and I kind of just I let my frustration get without me. I think I could have nipped a lot of it in the butt if I was as a more mature person by speaking up a little bit or taking the director and be like, hey, this is like a moment that I'm really struggling here and having this thing, and really pulling him into this bubble if he wasn't going to be, if that wasn't on the forefront of like or acknowledging what was going on. And that's probably what I would do as a mature actor now. It's like, hey, come on, I'm trying to do this. I would really like the set to be this so that I can get there.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah. And so, so that was kind of a rough point. But then the second one was, so I haven't had that many like sex scenes in movies, but I have had some. And so the first sex scene I ever did was it was in a short film, again, inexperienced kind of cast crew. The actress was great. She was playing kind of like a kind of like a nerdy introverted character that didn't really get out a lot and was struggling socially. And so I can't remember how in the story it happened, but anyway, he gets this escort, right? And she plays this escort. And they, of course, over the short film, it was very quirky, like Woody Allen, from what I remember, kind of esque. And he gets this escort, and they end up having this great relationship. This friendship ensues, and of course they sleep together. And like it changes the character, right? That's like the big thing. He gets more empowered, but also at the end of the day, he has a friend, right, for the first time. So it's like a poignant, cute story, quirky comedy. Like I said, Woody Allen,
for sure.
So we go to shoot this sex scene, and it's like sex scenes are always weird, right? They're just odd. And
it's never comfortable to shoot.
Never comfortable. There's usually,
but it is fun to like. And I realize I'm interrupting the story,
please.
But it is really fun when everyone on set sometimes doesn't 100% take it seriously. Because the one scene that I've been involved in, like with that kind of stuff, like I stood over the guy who was doing the friggin' deed, and they were every take. That they would just look into the cameras like, hey, and it's like not take it seriously at all. Like that kind of set's fun, and like, thankfully, like that's the only type of scene that I've had to shoot, like the intimate scene.
Yeah.
But no, it's going to be uncomfortable for everyone. It's probably best that hey, whoever doesn't need to be in here doesn't need to be in here.
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
Get out.
Yeah. So she was really cool about it, and like I was. Like I said, this is the first sex scene. So as you naturally are, you're very nervous about like, hey, I don't want to overstep my bounds, all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was very
plenty
young,
of things can go wrong.
Early 20s, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And so, but it also helped that the character was very quirky and nervous naturally. So I was like, whatever. So, but we're doing the deed, and of course, when you film these sex scenes, usually the part that isn't shown is either clothed or you don't have to be as into it. So we're both wearing sweatpants. It's not like anything is, and it's like we're half under a sheet, so it's not that bad. But there is way too many people in the room. Like it's just like very, very odd. You look about, and it's never a good feeling when you feel like you're being watched versus like people are like being working. You know what I mean? And it's already awkward because, I'm having, I'm like, as professional as possible, you're thrusting into this person that, you just kind of met. And like I said, wonderful actress, beautiful personality wise and just as a person. And so that was fine, but it was just the unprofessionalism of that set of how it was. There were so many people in the room. They had to shoot it way too many times in odd angles that they didn't end up using. Mm-hmm. It was just not coordinated. It was very evident that a lot of things were being fumbled while it was being shot. Like things just weren't prepared like for like that moment. Knowing that, these people are in like a weird predicament to begin with, it's just odd. And
there needs to be some kind of understanding in the room. It's like, hey, these two people are going to be like half nude. Let's just make this as comfortable as humanly possible.
And I feel for. Unfortunately, the situation was, I believe there was maybe one other female or woman in the room other than this actress, and so it was like, it was just an odd thing. You know what I mean? I also that probably got psychologically in my head at the same time of knowing everything and me being nervous and not being used to this. Is I was also feeling for her. I was like, man, this kind of blows.
This is not a great situation to be in.
Yeah, so those were two, pretty. It's as far as in the scope of things, it's not that bad, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have worse stories than I do, but as far it just comes down to kind of like unprofessionalism on set, I think, and just inexperience with handling certain scenarios. I think if that is addressed, a lot of just problems can be mitigated, right? As a director, you probably know better than I view a director as like they are the master problem solver on a set. There's always something that goes wrong or always something that kind of isn't what everybody anticipates, and they pull audibles constantly while trying to keep their vision intact. And they're master communicators, or at least try to be while they're on set, to the point where everybody kind of understands their vision, and they have like a cabinet, so to speak, hopefully, of like crew around them that they at least have a good connection with to where they everybody can collaborate to get to that vision. Right. And so those are the type of directors also that I just enjoy working with, in the sense that not only do we have a great trust on set, but like we have a great relationship probably offset as well, because we not necessarily sometimes, it doesn't get to the point. I love it when I have a great relationship with that person where it's almost like, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Let's do that. Or you don't have to articulate as much. That's always the most fun set, because you're like, oh man, yeah, I got it. Let's roll it. You know what I mean? We got it.
The best sets that I've been on, at least the best directors that I've worked with have, and maybe this is like the master communicator thing. Maybe not, like, I don't necessarily believe you need to be a master of communicating, but I think you need to understand everything you have to communicate your vision. Like, the director, number one, needs to have a vision and needs to be able to be confident in that vision.
Yeah.
And so he needs to be able to communicate, like, hey, this is going to be the next shot. This is how we're going to do it. I want this kind of lighting setup. Let's work on this. Or you've already prepped that beforehand. The worst directors that I've worked with, or at least like the times where if I've been frustrated on set, if I'm a cameraman or a cinematographer on set, is the director turns to me, is like, okay, what are we gonna do next? Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't plan this far ahead. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're the one who's supposed to be telling me. Those kinds of directors have frustrated me to the point where, like, okay, what do we want to do next? It's like, what do we want to do? Like, there is no we. Like, this is you, my dude. I'm just shooting it for you. Like, those kinds of things are frustrating. And like the times where I've been frustrated as a director on set is when I've been confused of what to do next. Like, I think there's a short film I did a while back called Worms, and I'm still proud of it to a degree, and like I had to like respect everyone who worked on that film. But there are times that I remember on set, which is the only time I've been confused as to what kind of product I was making. And I've seen like
as far as what genre or what do you mean by product?
Just as to like what this scene needs.
Got it. As far as for story.
Yeah, without going into too much detail, other short films I've worked on have been rather character based. Like, I know exactly what the character is thinking, and this film, so I can kind of like follow that mindset. Like, I know exactly what the character is thinking, and that's the tone that we're going to be introducing into this scene. That's what I want the audience to feel, because I know what the character's feeling. This is what I want the audience to feel. This wasn't like that. Like, the characters weren't. This wasn't necessarily a character-driven piece. And so throughout part of the filming, like, there were certain scenes that we got to, like, why does this need to exist, and why are like it? I'm kind of confused. Like, what do we do? Like, that it threw me off, and like that kind of it wasn't frustrating. It was just like, I don't know what to do, and then that obviously is going to come off to other people, and like the director doesn't know what he's doing. Like, now I'm confused. Like, what are we going to be doing
and
now?
That's a gateway to get in your head too when you're trying to be.
And that's going to get in my head because I know the other people are confused or frustrated because I'm confused and frustrated. It's like, oh crap, it's a freaking domino effect that just happened, and like that's terrible. But that kind of stuff's happened. I think like part of that is just maturing as a person, but also like getting comfortable enough with your craft. Because there are things like, I feel like when you're super young, you want to be either like this director, like I wanted to be like the next David Fincher. Like I wanted to be like super specific with what I wanted. Like the shots need to be like this and like whatever. And I had my pinky in my ear, and I talked to people like with a scarf on, and like that's the kind of director I want to be. And that sucks.
Yeah.
Freaking those kind of people, which I was. Freaking man, that's something else.
Yeah.
But over time, like I kind of and being surrounded by a community of people that I trust and really like to work with, really mellowed out over time. So I don't know. That's I think you kind of, I guess coming back to the question I had originally, like getting used to what you, the kind of sets and the kind of environments you like to be around, getting used to that is kind of going to dictate like what kind of a, I guess, filmmaker you want to be. That's a long explanation, and I didn't even realize that I was getting to this point. It was just kind of a rant.
No, it was great. I was here for it. Yeah, you said something earlier when we were talking about Pride and Prejudice, just because it was something so poignant, and I love this. I love that movies in general and films, they can resonate with an audience to such a degree that you relate to them in your real life. And I too, there's something. You mentioned the long walks that Keira Knightley's character kind of takes in that movie, and how it resonates with you mentally. And it's something that I too definitely. It's like there's something about the relief that you can empathize with the character of, her taking these long walks.
Yeah.
That I too, it's a clearing of the mental space.
Oh,
and
man.
so it's such a great, and I know that's based on a novel, right? And so that's kind of.
But even that the adaptation into a movie is freaking beautiful.
It's beautiful, but what I'm saying is like adding as a for screenwriting, adding those elements as character traits to identify to the audience goes so far. You know what I mean? It's killer, and like especially in this day and age, specifically like walking alone by yourself. I think we're so inundated with constant stimuli that from
we need to freaking do stuff constantly.
Exactly. And, social media or whatever, the smartphone permeating our lives, the constant connection cybernetically to each other is really, I think this is constantly talked about, but it induces so much anxiety just in our daily lives that I don't think and stresses that we haven't dealt with, I think, previously in comparison to now. Yeah.
I think my family is, and especially my dad, is really into taking a breather, relaxing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think like one of the most relaxing times sorry.
No, not at all. Yeah, keep going. You just sparked something in me. I was like, okay, cool.
Is we have a beach house on Surfside, and we were like working on the house, painting the house, making sure everything was good and everything there. But at a certain point of the day, we had worked all day, and we were just wanting to relax, like sit back. And so it was cloudy, so there wasn't a lot of sun.
Yeah.
And we just got like a bottle of wine, sat on the porch, and watched the waves because we're like beachside.
Oh, I'm jealous. That sounds amazing.
And we just listened to the waves, and there's something about that to where you just listen to those waves, and it rings. Something like awakens in you, and it's like, this is just so nice, and it's so hypnotic, and you could be there for hours and be fine. And that's what we did. Like we were there for like 30 minutes to like an hour, and we talked occasionally, but mostly we just listened to the waves. And something like that's like it triggers something in your brain, and it's just like, it's so relaxing. You don't want to leave, and I don't need to do anything right now or be on social media or do any of that stuff. I just need to be here in this, like, present in this moment. This is so nice. And and sometimes that like relates to me in movies, where I'll see just two characters just talking on a beach and just hearing the waves in the background or something like that kind of stuff. Like that'll just trigger a reaction in me, like, oh, this is relaxing. And that's kind of what Pride and Prejudice does for a lot in me, like a lot of like just the walks that they have, and the fact that that movie is not plot driven at all. It's just characters living in their environment and just sometimes just taking a breather. Like that kind of stuff like really resonates. You had a question.
No, I mean, it's funny you say that. When you're watching on the beach, the waves and everything like that, and there's something so primal about that, in the same way that when you're around, say, a campfire or just like a outdoor fireplace or something like that, everybody, no matter what, it's like this innate primal thing to stare at that fire.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from this sense of, I guess there's awe and wonder and everything like that, but it's a center focus for, I guess, community. I don't know if that's it. Where maybe like innately we all, gather around this place and, we would tell stories or whatever it was, but it was a gathering point for this community to have, because we're such social creatures. In the same token that I think, it became the form of entertainment, with plays and then cinema, whereas now everybody comes together for the sense of community.
Yeah.
And then pulling that into like where the world is going now, with social media and how we're inundated with so many screens and connectivity and stuff like that, and how now, the point is when we're around that fireplace or fire or ocean or at the cinema, everybody's experiencing something not only in communion, but we're having a presence with each other. All of the other, it's an escapism from all the other stimuli of our lives and our reality, and just for a moment, everybody can come together and be present in communion with one another to experience this thing and be in the presence of that thing and be enveloped in that one thing. And so, I guess what I'm getting at is, film, as we grew up, where you would go to the theater or whatever it is, was this time to escape from all of that. You had to, put your phone down, or you even didn't have a phone in the early 90s, right? Or you had the big clunky ones that didn't have all the smart capabilities. And so, it was your escape from all that stimuli and your reality, and you had to be present. But now and this is talked about a lot, I know social media is brought up, all the time in our conversations, just as people.
Oh, nothing that we talk about here is new.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But, social media and the inundated nature of it, how we're so enveloped by all these, screen stimuli, all that stuff, it disrupts that sense of presence and community. I think that bleeds into us.
It's a daily distraction.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Exactly. I think it stops. Not only do I think that it stops like our presence or community with one another and brings about anxiety, but my fear is that it also impedes our own creativity. I think, there's this thing about letting your imagination run, and it can only run when you start with the self-induced stimulus of being quote-unquote bored. Yeah. You're not really bored, but you're letting your mind kind of wander and create things and surf your own thoughts. And then somehow out of that, you're able to come up with an idea. And that idea is like a eureka moment and then you ride that idea's wave and you create something, you kind of tease out this
without getting like the distraction of something else coming in, impeding that creativity.
Exactly.
And then you got to go back to it later on, or like wait for that creative spark again.
Right. So when you get a text message, you're never, or not a text message, or even an update on Instagram or whatever, or TikTok.
Move the mic a little closer.
Oh yeah, TikTok or whatever. It stops you from receiving that creativity, and I wonder, and I have a fear that not only is social media affecting the stories we tell as life does. I mean, the stories we tell definitely evolve with our own experiences, but does it kind of impede the level or quality of creativity being outputted because
I've never thought of it like that, in that kind of creative sense, how that's really like disrupting it. Mm-hmm. That really actually does make a lot of sense. And maybe that's part of the reason why I kind of latch on to like slower stories like Pride and Prejudice, because a lot of the movies like nowadays are like, because that's how social media works. Like it's moving 100%. At a rapid
either that or
pace.
Spectacle based, where it's like
spectacle based.
It blows you. I mean, that's what all the Marvel movies are and stuff like that. Even though I like the Marvel movies, it's just
they're fun.
And I definitely want to get into this too because so I'm gonna finish this thought. But yeah, it's the Marvel movies and everything. They're spectacle based, and I agree. It's like it's off of that low attention span.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna capitalize on that.
Freaking yeah. And like I what you were talking about earlier, like everyone like going to the movies, having that like freaking like together experience. I mean, everyone can do that in their house now. Like it's not nearly the same thing. People used to get dressed up to go to the freaking movies, like it was a whole freaking event.
Yeah.
And like nowadays, like I can turn on my freaking TV. Not that that's really a bad thing. I'm a freaking introvert. That's great. But freaking, you used to have that like I guess, communal experience where like the person next to you was having the same experience watching the movie on screen. You like react and like, that was rough. And you turn to the next person that you don't know and like have a connection with that person automatically because we're watching the freaking same thing. And I think maybe part of the reason why everyone loves freaking like, and I certainly love like Top Gun Maverick.
Oh yeah,
freaking like that movie blew up, and it really shouldn't have, because it's not one of those movies that
it's not amazing on any front, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have a complex plot, it doesn't have like humongous character anything going on, but it has. I think it's so simplistic in its delivery, and everything is executed to a T. There's not a scene in that movie that doesn't need to be there. There's not something that happens that isn't detrimental. And like in the execution category, it's so good. Like in my opinion, like that's the best movie of the year so far.
Okay.
I will.
That's a strong
fight
opinion.
People on that.
Okay.
Like I've seen like some great movies, like freaking Nope, and like it's movies at the beginning of the year that I haven't freaking. I'm trying to remember, like Green Knight. That came out last year. Sorry,
I still haven't seen that one. Yeah.
And The Northman that came out this year, some great movies. But that movie stood out to me because it's a movie that perfectly brings people together. And like, in my opinion, like the best way possible. Like you cheer at the perfect moments. It's an optimistic movie. It's not like it's not political in any way. Like it's not trying to be anything else but what it is. Right.
I think going off that point, I think that's why I think it resonated with so many people and is so popular, is because it's the first movie in a very, very long time that isn't working on some divisive structure where it's like the plot isn't something that will only resonate with a certain demographic or maybe a large majority, but it's not everyone. Whereas this one, it's like there's not a point where you can like hate on story, right?
Yeah.
There's not necessarily like the bad guys are are like unnamed. You don't know where they're from or anything like that, right? Yeah. There's not a thing, so no one can get mad at that.
It's the enemy.
It's just the enemy.
It's like we're not clarifying this at all.
Yeah,
we're not gonna go into that.
It's about like exceeding your own the expectations you put on yourself or obstacles. It's very heartwarming story. It's like everybody can get behind this. It's got action. It's got a little bit of comedy. It's like, all the great elements that create the ultimate kind of escapism for everyone. Like I view as like, a lot of people. I mean, Martin Scorsese got flack recently, maybe even a year ago, when he started kind of not necessarily bashing, but like speaking out against like how
Marvel
cinema
movies.
has progressed with the Marvel movies and the spectacle stuff like that. Because when we grew up, there were, I think we were in like in an amazing, almost like golden age of storytelling where there was a lot of amazing smaller scale stories, but a lot of risks that were taken.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the studio structure and how corporatized it's gotten and the consolidation of things. Like Martin Scorsese came out recently and kind of bashed all the big spectacle films.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about. We're talking about Top Gun. So if you guys are coming back, we just we were talking about Top Gun Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is a professional podcast, I promise.
And so anyway, it was such a well-rounded movie. Had a little bit for everybody. Nothing that could people could get mad at. And Martin Scorsese came out recently and has been, I say bash, but just
he said they weren't cinema. Marvel movies aren't cinema.
Yeah, so I guess bashing. So and that's going on with the state of kind of the studio system and financing and how it's changed over the past couple of decades. And I want to hear your opinion on this, because it seems like, unfortunately, the studio systems, they've gotten a lot more corporate, I think, than they were. Even when I was out in Los Angeles, that was a big talk of the town, how corporate everything had become.
Yeah.
And so, and in corporate structures, first of all, when you basically, everything goes back to shareholder profits and returning value and basically minimizing as much risk as possible. And risk is basically the friend of creativity, right? You can't have like a new idea without taking the risk.
Yeah. And even though even technically bad movies, you can tell are taking a risk, and you respect like where you're going. Like I respect the crap out of what you're doing right now. Do I like it? No. But I agree. Like risk, you need to have that part. And you need to like roll the dice. Like let's kind of see where this goes. Maybe I'll succeed. Maybe I'll fail. But
Exactly.
You're certainly trying.
And out of that risk, when we grew up, we had some of the most incredible movies that were, had the backing by these studios. And now I say that only to say that, I think the point Martin Scorsese is getting at is it's much harder to make the caliber of movies like that have a lot of, he uses a lot of literary allegories and things like that, like high art cinema, like cinema as an art form.
Yeah.
Versus Marvel, where that's not to say that is not in his eyes, an art form, but it's just completely different. Where that is more of a family-friendly, fun experience. A fun experience, I think, is like the big point of it.
Yeah.
And still incredibly enjoyable, but not something that you will be profoundly affected mentally and causes you to think for the next couple days. Yeah. Whereas I think his type of cinema does that, and that's what he strives to do. And so when we grew up, we had these movies kind of like that won all these awards, that were championed all the time. Like I say, movies like Good Will Hunting and the like. Whereas I think that now, unfortunately, because the way the system is, how corporate it is, where you have this discrepancy in funding, where you either have films that are lower budget, being mostly horror, thriller, or films that can be shot, within a maybe $30 million range at most, or $50 million range at most. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you jump up to the big studio Marvel films, which are $200+ million a piece.
Yeah.
And there's this whole middle ground that's gone now. And whereas I feel like in the 90s, early 2000s, there's still remnants of it. And I think that I want you to speak to this too, but obviously there's been some structural changes. Like we don't have DVDs anymore, so they can't make money on the back end as well as the front end.
Yeah.
Streaming services, there's different ways that the financing and how movies make money is completely changed. Yeah. And that has definitely affected that. They need to have a bottom line. And then of course, going back to what I said earlier about returning value to shareholders and that corporate structure. But it's very frustrating because as especially a young filmmaker, or a filmmaker in general that's just trying to not do the formulaic, fun Marvel movie or something like that, and write for that kind of studio system, that world, and trying to do something with a totally new voice, it just makes it that much harder to be recognized, I think, as a new filmmaker, because you're already tried, right? You're not when you've got millions of dollars on the line, they don't want to risk it at all, right? And
no, I mean, like when Edgar Wright tried to come in for Ant-Man, Edgar Wright's a very not indie filmmaker because he's worked on humongous projects.
Yeah.
But he's very creative. Like you see his
totally
movies, like
voice.
Super creative, and he did not want to work. Like you see all these really great directors that come onto Marvel projects. Some stay, but a lot go.
Yeah.
And like you see, like that's a wonderful director, and then they stop because of creative differences, and like. Why did that happen? Like, what's going on there? And because the directors have a story they want to tell, and they're not going to be able to do that, which is why it's kind of funny that you see a lot of Marvel movies hire these directors that are not really known for anything, like maybe known for a few indie movies or stuff like that, and then they just direct a Marvel movie. Like, whoa, that's a humongous jump. And it's partly because I believe that Marvel is able to boss those guys around and able to control those guys, rein them in a little bit. Whether as a big director, they would have a little bit more of a presence. And I think that like really reigns true for maybe this is not something that you may not be super familiar with, or maybe you are, the Kenobi series. I
haven't seen it yet. Okay. I've heard mixed things, whether it's like you should not watch that or you should watch it.
Clearly, Darth Vader's right behind me. I'm a humongous Star Wars fan, and I love the character Darth Vader.
Fantastic character, like
been
wonderful.
One of my favorites since I was a kid, which is kind of concerning when one of your favorite characters like snaps people's necks. And I think my dad like told me when I was younger and I was super obsessed with Darth Vader, like that's weird. It's like I know, but like I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
And when the show, the Kenobi show, like the concept of that show is freaking awesome. Like it's Kenobi. Right after Revenge of the Sith happens, and it's between that and A New Hope, and he's like dealing with the fact that like all the Jedi are gone. He freaking failed Anakin Skywalker, and he doesn't know that he's Darth Vader yet, so he thinks he's dead, and that like that realization and everything, like all that like really rich story that you could really tell with these characters. The problem is, I'm not going to spoil anything if you still want to see it, and I still think parts of it are worth watching, but the show feels like a dumbed down version. Yeah, I'm not a positive person when it comes to this.
No, it's great. I'm just like, oh no.
I know. I'm sorry. The show feels like a dumbed down version of what it could have been, and it really feels like instead of a group of people that were passionate about a story, about this character, and about Anakin and Kenobi, and these characters that have such rich history and stories that you could tell. Instead of that, you have people that are hired on to do a job, and they're doing the job, and they're getting the story across, but in like every basic format ever. The story does nothing new, and it just like it hits the marks of where you would expect the story to go and never goes anything beyond that. And like it does that in execution. Like the cinematography is like really hit and miss. Like really hit and miss. Like the quality of the show is shockingly not on par for like what we would expect. Like the
as
whole
much hype as it has.
No, like
you'd expect all the money that's being thrown at it. To
and like
something.
It's weird because like the Mandalorian has such great production quality, like wonderful production quality, and then you see this and like the two biggest characters in all Star Wars, Kenobi and freaking Vader, and like it just dips in quality, which is weird. And then you get to that final confrontation that freaking showrunner Kathleen Kennedy said at the very beginning, like, this is going to be the rematch of the century. Well, what goes into your mind when you think rematch of the century? You like, yo, this is going to be
pumped.
Like, this is going to be amazing. And then you get to the showdown, and it's like, what? Really? That's the rematch of the century? It's like the rematch of the weekend. That's not the rematch of the century. Yeah. It's like amateur hour. What is this? And it's not in any way what they had built up or what Disney's proven to do with like The Mandalorian and like the fun stories that they're able to tell with that and the quality. It's not that. And I'm sorry that I'm killing this for you.
No, not at all. You've echoed. I have a friend that basically has said the same thing, and it's disheartening.
And like what you were speaking earlier with like the Marvel stuff, like it's corporatized, and it doesn't feel like someone who needed to tell the story. Like, I wanted to tell this freaking story, and it just needs to be told. Like, no, this is a story that we could tell and we're gonna tell, but we're gonna tell in the most basic cookie cutter way possible.
Yeah,
and it feels corporatized, and that's what. Unfortunately, like Star Wars is also becoming like a new Marvel now, and Star Wars used to be like so special because it was like the original trilogy, the prequels, and like maybe like the Clone Wars series, and like that was it, and it was like a kind of a special thing like fans could like latch onto, like that's mine. Like I remember freaking Vader coming out of the woodworks when I was smaller to chop off like Luke Skywalker's hand, like being like, oh, that's freaking terrifying, and like the presence that I felt when Vader was there, or like listening to Yoda for the first time and like he's like freaking awesome, that little dude's, or like seeing Han Solo for the first time chasing after those stormtroopers on the Death Star by himself. Like those moments felt special, and it felt like it was from a place of passion because George Lucas was like Star Wars was an original script too, and that came from like such a passion that he had for all of it. Like it was George Lucas's, and it felt like it was his. Yeah. And it even when you were watching it, like it felt like he was sharing that experience with you. And now Star Wars is normal. It's corporatized. It feels generic, and like formulaic. It's not special anymore, which freaking sucks. And that's bummer.
Yeah, but I mean, no, I completely agree. I think going off what you're saying, it's really frustrating when as things have gotten more corporatized, and I don't mean to sound jaded, but like as things have gotten this way, to see how some people's, and it's always a meld, right? It's where art meets business. So, in this collaboration, there's going to be some bumps and hiccups, but it really sucks when you can really see and witness the impediment of when business gets in the way of that creative vision.
Yeah.
Specifically, so one of my favorite directors of all time, like bar none, is Ridley Scott. And
man.
Yeah, I think
I know where you're going with this.
The scope of what he does is unbelievable how he basically puts this whole world. You know, he does the large scale sets. He's one of the only people I think now in our current time that still does such a large scope, you know, with how big his sets are, how big kind of the world is that he distills down into the cinema. And he does it to such a high degree. Like the cast, the crews, the makeup that he uses, the props, the costuming, like he is really, when it comes to those epics, there's no one that does it better, in my opinion.
Dude, yeah, Alien, freaking Gladiator,
Yeah.
even recently like The Martian. Like,
Oh, yeah.
those freaking wonderful movies.
Wonderful. But so with him, and this is such a sore subject because it is like it's so close to home. So there's a movie called Kingdom of Heaven that he did.
Have mercy.
And yeah, and so you know the movie.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So it was unfortunately kind of butchered in the editing process by the studio, from what I understand, getting cold feet. And what had happened was Ridley Scott, coming off the heels of Gladiator, as big as he was still, you know, kind of, you know, beholden to the studios and for financing and just kind of the overseeing of everything. And he got together, you know, his tried and true people that he worked with, and they created something super special in Kingdom of Heaven. If you haven't seen it, don't watch the theatrical release, whatever you do. Go watch the director's cut. Exactly. And he filmed this incredible movie with a lot of nuance and character development and just wonderful structure. And unfortunately, the studio got cold feet, and they felt, you know, the common critique always in films is it's too long. Yeah. And so they came at him with it being too long. I think at the time, I don't know how long the director's cut is, but
it's almost 4 hours long.
Okay, so it was almost 4 hours long. And so it was like not an unheard of note, but at the same time, if they had actually like really looked at it, of course they're fearful, right? They want to keep the audiences, you know, in their seats.
Yeah, and to their like respect, like movies at that time had a history of that kind of like bombing.
Yes.
What is it?
Other than Gladiator, prior to that, right?
Yeah, freaking Gladiator. There was a swashbuckling pirate movie that had that kind of same problem. What is it? Once Upon a Time in America. Like those kinds of movies, like those epic movies that just that take its time, and you know, like those movies freaking like
they were not doing
they
well.
were not like spectacle hits at the box office or anything.
Exactly. And even coming off the heels of Gladiator, which had won Best Picture and Best Actor, all that stuff, he was still kind of like fighting this uphill battle tooth and nail against the producers all along the way. Anyway, long story short, they cut down this movie, basically focus on the central character and cut out a lot of the character development throughout the movie. And as a result, the creative vision suffered immensely. Yeah. And unfortunately, that movie is largely forgotten in kind of the annals of cinema history and what has really transpired as far as Ridley Scott's canon. And it could have been, in my opinion, as good or, you know, up there with Gladiator as far as his movies that he's done.
And the director's cut is still really good.
Yeah, the director's cut is phenomenal, I think. There's a lot of nuance and things that are developed. But, I mean, like, what he had put together in that film, it's great. But I say that only because it's like it is up there for me as one of my top films because of everything that coalesced in such a beautiful film. Just because you have the music is phenomenal, the acting is great, the story that is trying to be accomplished because it is also like relatively historically accurate. You know, and you're dealing with just the world, the community, that everything. It was just, I really enjoy that.
Yeah,
I really enjoy. It went from being, you know, the theatrical release is a swashbuckling adventure tale versus like what Gladiator ended up being, which is this dramatic epic. You're watching this revenge tale, but it's really encapsulated in this dramatic epic. You know, and I think in Gladiator exceeds where like movies in the same tone or the same theme would be like The Count of Monte Cristo, where that, which is another phenomenal movie that wasn't received well at the time.
For some dumb reason, because that movie's fantastic.
Great movie. But I think, you know, Gladiator is a step above that. But going back to what we talked about originally in the conversation, where, you know, Martin Scorsese, you know, we grew up with all these incredible movies. Like we grew up with, you know, whether it be like The Patriot or, Good Will Hunting or just so many, risk-taking films. I mean, like I don't know half of them right now if they would be greenlit today, which is sad.
I mean, you hear that common phrase like this would not be made today, whether that be like for politically correct reasons or just because like they just don't make those movies like that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
One movie, this may not be on your list at all, that just, I'm shocked that this, like, if you look at it, like, in the context of where it was made, you're freaking shocked that this movie was even made and released. And it may not be like the movie that you're thinking about, but Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
Ooh. At World's End?
At World's End.
Yeah.
That... I love the second two Pirates of the Caribbean. In my opinion, I think the first Pirates of the Caribbean is overrated.
Really?
And not really my favorite one.
Okay.
The second two are my favorite, and I can watch them all the time. It is weird. But if you think about it for a second, and this may not be like a movie that like screams like risk-taking if you think about it. But if you think about it for like a few minutes, for Pirates of the Caribbean 3, the opening scene is children hanging.
Yeah.
In the movie, you see a bunch of Jack Sparrows on a ship. All of them have really strange, weird personalities. All of them are around each other, talking to each other, and one of them's a chicken. They're trapped in Davy Jones' locker, which is just in a vast, infinite desert. The movie's 3.5 hours long. There's blood, there's guts, there's gore, there's people getting beheaded. There's strange scenes with like Jack Sparrow taking his brain out and licking it. Like, it is a weird, strange, odd movie that takes its freaking time. All the characters have their own individual stories and own individual plot threads, and sometimes the movie goes for like a long, extended period of time without a single action piece. And like even the ending action piece was the most expensive action set piece of all time at that time, and I think might still hold up there as one of the most expensive action scenes put together. And they built these ships, and it is a strange movie where it is just strange.
Dude, you made me want to watch it
and it's
again.
made by Disney, and it's made by Disney, and all the money is thrown at it, all of it, and they just entrusted everything to like Gore Verbinski and his team to make this movie. And you think like, this is a Disney movie? Like, it again, let me reiterate, this movie opens on a child hanging. It's weird. And it is like a strange movie and a weird movie, and so much weird stuff happens in this movie, and it's epic, and it's fantastical and over the top in every way, shape, or form, and so many weird genres are thrown in this movie. This movie should not exist, and it's produced by Disney. Freaking Disney. And they made this movie, and it's just such a weird phenomenon. And you see the like behind the scenes, and Gore Verbinski said behind the scenes, like, there will never ever be a movie like this made ever again, because that was one of the most expensive films ever made, and I think it's still like one of the highest grossing films, I think, at this point, but it's oddly forgotten for a lot of people, which is unfortunate, because I think it's just a fun, weird movie. But that's just one of those those very few odd movies that really shouldn't exist like in the studio spectrum, but just does, and it's weird, and it's awesome. And it's like, and I guess to your point, like Kingdom of Heaven, to where Ridley Scott, who is a wonderful director and should be able to give him some creative control considering the products that he made, was just limited. And Gore Verbinski, they just said, screw it, do whatever you want. And like, that's the kind of weird vision that is able to happen when you have a director like at like the height of its power, and you're just able to do that. That's kind of like luxury cinema, where all the money is clearly on the screen. All of it is used to like a freaking T, and you can tell. Like that's like luxury cinema, just meaning like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, the first three, not the other ones, they're trash. And like the Lord of the Rings movies. Which again, like even Lord of the Rings movies, like Peter Jackson, we think it's like obvious. Man, obviously that's amazing, but like at the time, it's a fantasy series. Those don't make money, and it's a 3-part movie deal that we're all filming at the same time. That's gonna bomb horrifically, and it's a New Zealand director who's mostly known for grimy horror movies. This is a weird combination, and it worked out so well.
Truly, and I can't, because originally he was going to shoot it all in like one movie, right, or two movies, and they greenlit it and they gave him like money for 3.
Yeah.
Which was not him. I want to know what the
heck?
pitch was. Like, how did he pitch that?
I don't know. I don't know what he had to do. Like behind the scenes, it was like I don't know who he brought into the back room and hold a gun to. Is like, I'm making 3 movies and you're gonna make this happen.
Honestly, okay, so this is a great moment. So I want to know what your thoughts are on CGI, because how do you feel about that now? Because I feel like, like it's the same token. We're still in the same vein of like, what Martin Scorsese says about the spectacle films.
Yeah.
And granted, these films are done because I think so much of the audience now is not necessarily the domestic audience. And for those of you listening, like that's something to differentiate. Is like now in cinema, a lot of the audience is for, outside of the country. It's mainly for China, Asia, all that stuff, because that's where a lot of the population is, India. And so like now, on Netflix, you can see all these great foreign films coming in, or India films, or I say India, Bollywood films coming in.
Like the freaking Korean
or Korean dramas.
Korea's been freaking killing it
Absolutely,
recently.
Absolutely. And so, now you have
the Train to Busan. If you haven't seen Train to Busan, stop, and just watch.
Or Parasite. Just go watch Parasite if you haven't seen that. I know that's probably
I got some strong feelings about that movie that are not positive.
Oh,
Sorry.
Really? Okay.
No, like for the vast majority of that film is like this is pretty good ending. Okay. We can go back to this part.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, as far as CGI goes, I think a lot of it, I think the American audience, we were hit with CGI in probably the early 2000s relative to the rest of the world, which is now, I think, getting what we, the first aspects of CGI just a little bit later. That's probably like an 8-year, 10-year difference.
It is. That's why a lot of like foreign films have like a very strange tint to their CGI. Like it looks weirder. It doesn't look the same.
Right.
That's all I can really say about their CGI. It doesn't look the same. It looks weird.
Exactly. Whereas our CGI, I think, at least it's starting to become more and more tasteful, because I think our audiences aren't as forgiving of it. We don't want to suspend our disbelief of it. And so now it's being more and more tastefully done to where you can, it's more seamless than it was originally.
Yeah.
How do you feel about CGI as in, what Hollywood's doing now, where I think there's so much, especially in the Marvel films, like it's mostly CGI.
I think like the traditional, like the quote unquote filmmaker, pinky in the air, like whiskey in my hand kind of like thing to say is like, it's like there's too much CGI. There's got to be all like practical effects and stuff like that. I'm going to smoke my cigarette and like put that down and whatever, and like have a heroin addiction. And like that kind of like filmmaker's perspective is like, there's too much CGI. Practical effects matter. Of course, practical effects are great when necessary, but like CGI, I don't have a problem with CGI. Like it's 100% a tool. A lot of filmmakers use it, and some filmmakers use it better than others. Obviously, like I think in like Marvel movies, it's like it's to a degree where it's numbing, to where like if you watch a Marvel movie like now. If you watch Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Haven't seen that yet. I've been told, like, again, hit or miss. It's like, I think you can skip that one as far as in the Marvel canon.
You can probably, you can skip a lot of Phase 4 movies, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's sad. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Okay. So I got into, going off, just finishing up the CGI thing is like, I get the snooty kind of like old director style of like, you can't use CGI.
Yeah.
I love what you said about it being a tool, and I think that is a great way to look at it. I think you can overuse a tool, and all of a sudden that tool stands out.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's like we're finding a balance and calibrating that tool now. I think at first we definitely overused it, especially since the technology wasn't up to snuff enough to where it could be used a lot more and not stand out. And now, because we're not willing to suspend our disbelief, it just has to be used a little bit less. And
it doesn't mean as much anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that practical effects, it looks like, are coming back into more vogue. It, when CGI first came out, it was really expensive to do. Now it's gotten way less expensive, from what I understand, in comparison to practical effects, because of the amount of people involved in practical effects. And the artistry, right? Of it. Not to say that CGI isn't an artistry; it's a totally different VFX thing.
Yeah, but do you think it's weird that like back then when Jurassic Park first came out,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you saw the dinosaur, we're like, whoa, and you're like
Dude.
in awe of that, like the thing that's in front of you that could never exist in reality, but it's
Yeah.
freaking there. And then we see this like monster in a
Yes.
Marvel movie, and it's like, that's there, that's happening, cool. And it's our non-reaction to this technically amazing thing that could never exist in reality,
Yeah.
and that Marvel made happen. We just like, like no reaction whatsoever. Like,
Yeah. It is interesting, but I think also I love that you brought that up because I think I've said a couple movie magic moments for me, but definitely that is it. Maybe the top one is because it like with the music and everything by John Williams and the way Steven Spielberg has it revealed of when you first see the dinosaurs, and it's like everything coalesces right there. As a kid, I was. And still as an adult, I become a kid watching that moment. I think that's a sign of like movie magic, right? It's like it transports you like in that moment. Oh, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It's like it is unbelievable amazing, right?
Yeah. And I think that goes to show like execution to a scene and really our investment of the characters and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like all of that stuff goes into our experience as well. Like with the amazing achievement in like CGI that we technically have nowadays, and like the monsters and the things that we can see on screen, like some of that, like I don't care. Like you have a non-reaction to those kinds of things. But if you have like, say for instance, Jaws, and kind of the fakeness of what that shark actually is,
Right.
But you're still freaking terrified of it.
Yeah.
Like it goes to show like what execution does with like limited budget that Jaws has. How much fear you're able to envelop from something that when you get to see it, it does look fake, but you're still like it's terrified of like of what's going to happen to everything. Like the quality may not be the absolute best, but like the execution and everything from the actors, from the camera crew, from the directing, and everything involved is like so on point, and the music and score, like all of that is perfect. To something like with a Marvel movie where all the technical aspects are perfect, and maybe like what hits you emotionally isn't there. If that makes sense, I'm not sure if that necessarily.
No,
correlates.
it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It I think that's what makes, directors like Steven Spielberg or whatever stand out is when all of that kind of like coalesces, the reveal happens, and that, it's done so tastefully and
Move Michael a little closer.
Oh yeah. Done so tastefully and is so well paced that when the reveal happens, the payoff is so
good,
worth it. Yeah. Whereas I think also, Marvel, what the Russo brothers and Kevin Feige have, I think that's how you say his name, right?
Kevin Feige.
Yeah, Kevin Feige. What they've done is, some of those movies are otherworldly as how good they are.
Yeah, Infinity War is fantastic.
Yeah,
movie.
and the pacing that they do and the screenwriting and how they, the fun creativity with the balance of action and comedy in there is, I mean, it is a masterwork in what they're doing. So it's great. You can't flack that. But going back, what Steven Spielberg is doing, and I guess that's why he's like one of the GOATs, right? Why he's so big.
Still freaking awesome.
Yeah. And the fact that he did some of these things when he was so young, like, it's like, what? Like, you would expect that from a guy, like, when someone finally told me his age when he was doing Jaws and all these huge cinema moments, I was like, I thought he was so much older than that, I was like, what?
He's a young boy.
Yeah, and he was able, not only, he was able to do those things, but he made such an impact at such a young age that the studios were so willing to just be like, yeah, we'll trust you.
Yeah, he freaking created one of the first like big blockbusters with Jaws.
Yeah.
And like a nation of just people who were like, I'm not going in that ocean. Freaking Bruce is there. He's going to eat my toes. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And like that kind of reaction and that kind of like expertise at that young age. And you freaking created one of the first biggest blockbusters ever. It's crazy. And that young. And like I'm jealous. Like, why can't I do that? But I'm fine. That's insane. And it goes to show like the kind of, I guess, expertise and how much you're also able to suffer through, because a lot of that was just a pain to film.
Yeah.
But if it's okay, I'd like to go back to the CGI argument again.
Oh, yeah, please.
And this is part of the reason why I also respect like the innovations of like CGI at the very beginning. If you follow the career of George Lucas, who's one of my personal favorites just because of what he's done, how much he's innovated over times. When you think of like the prequels, everyone always thinks of the original trilogy, and I love the original trilogy of Star Wars movies, but the prequels are probably innovated movies going forward more than those movies did. With the implementation of CGI in those movies, because half the crap in The Phantom Menace was not even possible at the time. And he just pitched an idea to the studio and made his ideas with the ability of like, how we don't even know how to do this, and what you're asking us is impossible. And we just need to figure out how to do it now. And with everything that we have nowadays, with readily available CGI and things to create new worlds, none of that existed. And he was just like, let's create worlds. Like, we don't know how to do that. Like, what are you saying? And what he was able to do with those movies and just technologically innovate everything with those movies to the point where Revenge of the Sith, where all that CGI, in my opinion, holds up beautifully. Mm-hmm. And again, I love that movie. I will die defending that movie as actually a legitimately amazing movie. With all of that stuff happening, he is such a technological innovator, and people don't give him enough credit with that kind of stuff. So if you see like the behind the scenes and how much effort he went into to do something different, to create worlds, to create new characters and all of that kind of stuff, he did more for filmmaking for the past several years than most people give him credit for. And really people need to kind of respect him for that, because without the prequels, a lot of what has happened nowadays couldn't be possible.
Right.
For better or for worse.
Right.
So that's my rant on George Lucas.
No.
Subscribe.
Yeah. He definitely imprinted on, I guess, the history of cinema, forever, for sure. It's the same thing with Steven Spielberg or other greats like that. I mean, those people are pivotal to what we see now, right? One of my favorite movies, I think, of this past year that I really... Oh, sorry. One of my favorite movies of... I'm going to get this right. One of my favorite movies, I think, of this past year that, that fell kind of like on deaf ears in the sense that most audience members didn't go to see it, and I think it was also a product of just mismarketing and not marketing it enough, was, I'm pitching this movie and I can't think of the title. It's oh gosh, it's Adam Driver and Jamie Comer are the two leads with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. They wrote it. It's their first time. It just came out. It's told in 3 acts, non-linear.
Adam Sandler?
No, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and Adam Driver.
Adam Driver.
And Jamie Comer.
No. I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Medieval movie. Crap. What is...
It's based on a true story.
And Ridley Scott. I've seen the movie.
Ridley Scott directed it.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
What the frick is it called? The Last Duel.
Last Duel. Great, thank you. We had a brain fart there. We got it, guys. Okay, so
we've reached conclusion of the start of the conversation.
That's it. And but that movie, I think, like I said, I think it was just mismarketed and it wasn't marketed enough. But it's a movie that apparently, it was the first time that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon had come together and written something since Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
And they came together. Ridley Scott, they got to direct it, and a phenomenal movie. I mean, if you just watch the fight choreography, that's something we haven't really talked about, is fight choreography and stunt work.
Dude,
the stunt work and the fight choreography, how those action sequences were shot, phenomenal. Again, it's Ridley Scott's scope, how he basically brings you into that world, and it's beautifully, beautifully shot. I just thought it was just such a well-done movie. And then, of course, you have these titans of actors doing it in Jamie Comer and Adam Driver. And they just really, I think, steal every scene they're in, even with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in some of their scenes.
And by the way, Ben Affleck should not have been great in that movie, and he was actually fantastic.
Yeah.
I saw him in the trailers like, you look stupid. And then I saw him in the movie, and you were good.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting thing, because it jars you as an audience member as Ben Affleck, and then you saw the costuming that they put him in.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Like, that's Batman, and like, that's weird Batman.
Yeah, right. Totally. But I thought it was great in the same way that I think And I'm not sure. I think The King was far better, well received, and maybe it was because it was on the back of Timothy Chalamet, who had just come off of doing some big movies like Lady Bird and Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
And so carried that into the forefront of the audience wanting to go see it because it had such a star factor back it, you know. But that, another one, historical epic, brought into this world, well done, well shot, well executed, well written. Both those movies, and they're slow burns, right? So, but what differentiated The Last Duel is that it was told in a risk-taking manner, in the sense that you're watching the same event 3 different ways from 3 different perspectives.
Yeah.
Same exact event. You know what's going to happen, but you just don't know to the degree at which it will happen.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. Such a risk, like I said. And the fact that, you know, the sad thing is, for everybody listening and for like film lovers out there or whatever it is, you vote with your dollars what's going to be made, what's going to be financed. And what I mean by that is, if you don't go to the theater and you don't see it, or you don't stream something, you know, it's not, you're never going to see that ilk again, or it's going to be hard pressed for that movie, that type of movie to be financed again, because at the end of the day, it's all about making money. It's all about that bottom dollar, which is super frustrating from a creative perspective, because you just want to be able to create whatever.
Yeah.
And it lends itself to that whole studio system, that formulaic thing that we're seeing, where all it is now not all it is, but a lot of it right now is capitalizing on already built-in audiences from either nostalgia or already established franchises that they're rebooting, or you're basically just retelling the same type of story again because they know it works,
and not in a way that's just lazy.
Yeah, it's become lazier. And how they make it still exciting is they inject it with a lot of spectacle. You know what I mean? And they grab a lot of big actors and they put them in there because they know the names will sell.
But again, like, those people are doing, like, get back to the Kenobi series. These people are doing a job. They don't feel like they need to tell this story. This is just a story that they've been hired to tell by a company that's paying them.
Right. And yes. And on this note, okay, so I have experienced this, and I think we might have briefly, offhand conversation sometime, talked about this, but maybe you've probably experienced it as well. The most frustrating thing is when you're on a project, you're shooting something and you become part of someone else's film, and especially if it's your film, it's hard to understand until you're in this position, but it sucks, but it's always true. You're usually the most passionate person about your own project, right?
If like freaking usually, yeah.
Exactly. And so everybody else that is hired or is there to kind of support you or whatever on your film, even if they're hired and paid well, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the amount of time, effort they give is usually in proportion to what their compensation is, rather than like their true love of being there. Now, sometimes you get involved in a project where the script, the story, something else is happening, and you actually get impassioned by the passion of someone else, or like the story you're telling. And those are, sadly, in my experience, rare, but when they happen, it's like seize the day on it.
It's a click for the audience, and I think the people who are making it know it's happening.
Yeah.
Like, they know they're making something special, and we're all like, we get it. We're all on the same page. I've had that happen a few times where you can tell, like, the cast and crew, like, we can tell something good is happening.
Right.
And we are all on board. Like, let's kill it. Let's kill it today. Let's do this. And you can, like, by the same factor, you can tell when no one gives a crap and when everyone is, like, tired and wants to go home. I've been on both those, like, sets where it's like same location. Like, it's hot. Everyone's tired. It's a long day. And it's a project that we can tell, like, either like, there's like the same, no, none of the wavelengths are hitting. Like, no one is on the same wavelength, and there's some like dispassion somewhere along the line, and half the crew doesn't care. So we're just trying to get out. But that same factor, you can go like day in, day out with a different project, and everyone is like clicking because we know, like, I know, like, this is something special. I'm investing my time into it. Let's kill this freaking scene. I think that really just, it depends on the cast, depends on the crew, it depends on who you're working with, but it also depends on, like, the story that you're telling and how special it is and how much it affects the people around you, because like this story needs to be told because it's awesome, and the script is awesome, this shot is awesome, this acting is awesome. Like, we know we're creating something special and unique. Like, let's freaking kill it. Yeah. That was, yeah.
Hell yeah. I was all on for that ride. I loved it. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. That was a great like button. You articulated it well.
Yeah. I think that's partly like, and again, I'm going back to Top Gun for just a second.
Love it.
There's so much passion in a lot of like the recent projects that Tom Cruise has been in, and I don't even know what clicked in him recently, but the movies that he's made recently, like what's that movie where he's in the bodysuit and he's like fighting aliens, like
with Emily Blunt.
Yeah, with Emily Blunt. Live, Die, Repeat or something.
Yeah, that was the original title.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow, yeah.
Edge of Tomorrow, Mission Impossible 7, which should not have been good at all, but was amazing.
See, I haven't seen that one yet.
So dang good.
Really?
So good. And then Top Gun. There's something about the execution of his movies recently that is just flawless.
Dude, go ahead. Yes. I want to say he is for sure execution great, and he knows what he's doing, and he's you know, he says in interviews he loves what he does, and he's putting so much passion behind it. But also what people forget, because they think of him as just this action star, he is one hell of an actor.
He's a great actor.
When he wants to, like, when he's not wants to, when he's cast in those roles, or when he casts himself in those roles, he really executes those moments, and he does it to the best of his ability.
He does.
So professional. He kills it. Like, I don't remember which Mission Impossible it was, but it was with Philip Seymour Hoffman playing the villain.
Oh, the third one. Oh my gosh. Dude.
When he's like, you know, basically being like Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is torturing the who we perceive as, I don't want to give it away, but his reaction is great. That moment is great. You know, him in Collateral is phenomenal with Jamie Foxx, who's probably one of the most talented people I've ever seen in my life, Jamie Foxx. But yeah, that movie where he's playing such a I don't know, man. It's like a gritty, matter-of-fact hitman.
Anyone who doesn't think Tom Cruise is a good actor, all right. Tropic Thunder, Magnolia, Born on the 4th of July, all of those movies, you don't even know it's him. Tropic Thunder in particular, because he's freaking hairy and like
big hands,
face mask, everything, like and just fat,
Les
like
Grossman.
Les Grossman. Magnolia, where he plays.
I still haven't seen that.
So good. Paul Thomas Anderson.
He's one of my favorite directors of all time.
I am not an art house moviegoer, but there's certain art like Green Knight, The Witch, and Magnolia, and pretty much all of Paul Thomas Anderson movies I love to death. I love, like, Master is one of my favorite movies of all time.
You hit it. You hit it, my man. Seriously.
The ending of that movie is pure bliss for me. Like, and in my opinion, that's such a wonderful, feel-good ending. Movie. In my opinion, like, some people have seen The Master and said, like, it's a depressing ending. Like, it's not. It's it's incredibly optimistic ending. But back on Tom Cruise for a second. He's a wonderful actor. Don't get like, and Last Samurai, by the way. Like,
yeah, a lot of people hate on that movie. I don't,
who's wrong.
Yeah, right, exactly. Who's wrong? I think I get a lot of criticism is a lot of people like watch it and they just don't believe him as that coming from the Top Gun guy. That's the thing that I remember, and I'm like, well, this guy's an actor and he's killing it, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful movie, like the pacing of it, and like the respect, and not only do you get the movie does an incredible job, in my opinion, of balancing, showcasing the Japanese culture and the way of the samurai way of living, while also having such revered respect for it in the filmmaking of it, photographing it.
Oh, my gosh, it's gorgeous.
the pacing of it, the attention to detail, like just the placement of garments on other people, and how those things are filmed, the interactions of from person to person, and how the tension that is created,
and the attention to detail and honor, like that is the key point to all of Samurai, and what motivates their freaking action to everything. I forget his name. He was in Inception. Ken Watanabe.
Hell yeah.
His line and his obsession with the story of the
cherry blossoms. What?
No, of the Battle of Thermopylae. And of the Spartans, the 300 Spartans who stood up to the Persians, and his obsession with that. And when they're right about to go into battle, he asks Tom Cruise, like, what happened at the Battle of Thermopylae? And what happened to the soldiers? And he said, dead to the last man. Yeah. And normally, if you're talking to a soldier, like, that'd be terrifying, because that's the situation they're in. They're in against an impossible situation.
Yeah.
But for, like, Ken Watanabe and his character, who's samurai-based and honor-based, like, that is the best way to go. To die in battle is the greatest honor. And, like, that motivates him. He draws a sword and charges. Like, that is the most, like, hyped I've ever been for a freaking movie. It's so awesome.
Oh, my gosh. 100%, man. Like, when that whole moment, that sequence is so beautiful and heart-wrenching and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful. Oh my gosh. And then when he has to do what is it, seppuku or whatever, when he
the ending. Jeez.
It is so. That movie is slept on, I think, by a lot of people.
Someone's wrong when they said it's bad.
Yeah,
someone's wrong.
It is beautiful. It is truly beautiful, and like I don't know what happened to that director. I don't really know where he went from that.
I don't know.
You know, I
don't.
I thought that was such a great job. You know, but it's a crazy thing in the industry. It's like you do one bad movie, and if you haven't had a canon to your name of success, you can be just thrown out with the bathwater. It's like
ridiculous.
Yeah, you know, I think about, and I don't know. There's a conspiracy around this movie, and I didn't see it because it looked terrible, and obviously it probably was terrible. But Cats. So Tom Hooper does, you know, a couple movies. You know, everybody knows Les Miserables. Wait, what? Oh,
just making sure. No, you're good. Keep going.
Les Miserables. And, you know, it gets well received. It's really cool. He does something totally different with a musical. Does it great. And it's filmed really well. Great movie. And then later on, they greenlight this Cats movie. A lot of CGI. A lot of people doing Cats. Cats is not a story, by the way. It's like this weird concoction of Cats. It doesn't really have a through line throughout of it. It's just a lot of songs. It's like
drugs, the screenplay.
Yeah, and like a lot of people, in my opinion, like I grew up doing theater and stuff like that, and like, so I'll go see a play. I'll go see, if a musical's good, I'll go see it. Not as much as into plays. I'm into musicals, so like plays are definitely for me a little bit better. And then, but Cats is like, in my opinion, and I'm gonna step on some people's toes, but if you like Cats, you're usually a dancer or like into musicals in general, and that's like your vibe. And I get it, because obviously the music is beautiful, and the dancing is basically in the music is what showcases Cats in general. But that movie. But my point being is that movie was not received well. It was not done well. Tom Hooper, I don't know what he's done really since, unfortunately. He might have been doing some stuff, and it's going over my head, and I'm so sorry, Tom, if you find this and you're listening to me and you're like, this asshole. But I just don't know what, I think that's a classic example of this director that was literally everyone was talking about him. And then now I just don't know what happened.
I think that might be just a studio-based mentality where sometimes you do one for you, one for the studio. Maybe you're not super passionate about the project, but you just need to do this project to either finance your next project or something like that. That's what a lot of directors do. Like Ridley Scott does that. He does one for the studio, one for him, one for the studio, one for him, which may be the reason why some of his more modern movies aren't great, but some are awesome. Like, again, Martian and freaking the movie we just talked about, The Last Duel.
Yeah, Last Duel.
And again, that happened to one of my other favorite director, who I can't remember his name for the life of me. I apologize. But the guy who did Pride and Prejudice. He's known for those period piece movies and his fantastic direction on all those movies, and he did Pan, which was ironically panned.
Wow.
Like, that movie was not well
Hugh
received.
Jackman as Hook.
Yeah, Hugh
guys.
Jackman, not well received at all. And that hurt him emotionally because that was a movie he invested a lot of time in his life into. But then he did The Darkest Hour, and then that movie got an Academy Award, and that got a lot of prestige and nominated for Best Directing, Cinematography, and everything. And he was back in the market.
Yeah.
So I think directors just need to be careful about those kinds of things and just
Yeah, well, there's a conspiracy that I've heard, and maybe this is completely just gossip or whatever it is, but around Cats, in the sense that the studio purposely had it flop to take a huge tax write-off, and like the studio did, to save.
I would believe that.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like right now, if you're listening to this presently, what's going on? I know in the movie industry right now is with Ezra Miller with The Flash.
That's rough.
There's a lot of different options. I don't really like them. One of the options is. So Ezra Miller is cast as The Flash in the DC universe. One of the big options right now, obviously, he's got, he keeps getting all these altercations and
arrested multiple times.
Exactly.
Property theft, assault in Hawaii, potential grooming of a kid. That's rough, and a bunch. Like he apparently has a cult, which is kind of weird.
Something, and who knows what all of the things he's doing, but the point is he's kind of like untouchable, other than he's cast as this main DC superhero, is heading basically the Flash like whole franchise of films within that DC universe. And so, if he wasn't the Flash and he hadn't already done this movie, they would have already done away with him. But now they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
And there's a couple different options. The one that I do not want to see happen is, and I'll tell you why, is them scrapping the movie altogether.
No.
Yeah, and the reason is because all the people that work on that movie don't get to see any of their work come to fruition. This, for a large majority, not a large majority, some of the time, you got to remember that this might be the first big break that this makeup artist or this what other person has. Somebody, as an example, someone working on this, and it's the worst. Like from a first-hand experience, my good friend and roommate was in this show that really was called Heathers, and it came out, I believe, on Paramount. And right when Paramount was launching, it was this big show. It was based on the movie Heathers, and it was prior to the pandemic, and we had a lot of mass shootings were really the forefront of everybody's mind. They were happening a lot of like bomb threats and things like that. And if you know the original movie, Christian Slater's character, there's a bomb that he tries to detonate at high school. It didn't coalesce with like what was happening, the times. Yeah. And so obviously because of that massive risk, the network ended up kind of scrapping it and not really releasing it widely, other than releasing it without a lot of marketing, pulled a lot of the funding for the marketing for it, and just ended up not being received well, even though the show in general is actually a pretty great like teen, in the same vein as the original movie show is. Oh, and Cat, or no, what I'm talking about, not Cats, Flash, the Flash.
Oh, freaking
yeah.
The whole
that's
thing.
what I was saying. So Heather, obviously there's an outstanding circumstance that affects the show Heathers, and they chose to scrap it because of that. But a lot of those main actors on the show, like with my roommate at the time, this was their first big thing, and it was going to be their first, mass. It was going to set their careers off on a great trajectory, and because of that outstanding circumstance, it's out of their control. They don't get that opportunity. And it was totally not up to them, and so it was just kind of a rug pull to them. In the same token, I don't want that to happen to The Flash with Ezra Miller. That although, I don't condone what he's doing, I don't think all those other artists that work on such a massive film should have the same token. It's the same thing that happened with. This is going to be controversial, but it was. There's a movie called Birth of a Nation that they were going to come out with, that with I believe is Nate Parker was the main actor's name. I can't remember. But anyway, he had some rape allegations that happened to him.
I remember this. Yeah.
And it was like going to be an Oscar favorite. He was had all this Oscar buzz to win like Best Actor, Best Picture.
I actually remember seeing Birth of a Nation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I didn't see it. And so it's not that great. Okay.
It's not that great.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
it's okay. It's not that great.
Well, at the time, I just remember it having all this buzz. But they ended up scrapping it all from all those allegations. And yet I was thinking, man, all these other people that worked on this movie.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating that, and I get it. It's like, it's a weird fine line. Like, obviously, you never want to condone the actions of like an individual that are
No.
reprehensible. But at the same time, you don't want, because all these other people's work coalesced to create this thing.
It's a really weird through line that Hollywood probably needs to do a better job. I know a lot of times Hollywood plays the moral high ground, but like look at their history, it's not really great. Loads of people that are just ugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of thing where the set production, cinematographer, director, actors, everyone involved, that's years of their time wasted. And don't do that to the actors and crew for specifically for The Flash and for like any future movies. Like that's a horrible thing to do to somebody because of something. You're punishing everybody else because of this one lunatic. And Ezra Miller should go to jail for sure. But don't punish everybody else for this. Like I know that the three option that they're struggling with was either having Ezra Miller have an interview with the public and then just releasing it, but not have him involved in the marketing. Either replace him, reshoot it with someone else, or just scrap the movie. I don't know. There's got to be a way where they can just leave him out entirely, but also release this movie because there's been so much like involved in this movie, and then screenings that have people that have seen the movie have like this is a really good movie. Yeah. So imagine like what the cast and crew must feel after taking all this time and creating this product and then having this screwed up because of one person.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that he's like the main person in the movie just because like it has been done well prior to this where they've had to, because of allegations, recast, and it hasn't impacted the movie's ability to do well.
Yeah.
All the money in the world. I think of the Kevin Spacey like thing. They took him out and they put what's his name? The guy from The Sound of Music.
I know exactly who you're talking about. And he's from Knives Out, too.
Knives Out, exactly. Gosh, great actor. But they replaced Kevin Spacey with that and it didn't affect everything. But
no, and even like in one of Zack Snyder's movies recently, the zombie movie, Army of the Dead, there was one rape allegation with one of the other actors from the crew. And what they did was just they digitally replaced him with a comedian, a lady comedian. I forget her name. She's actually really, really funny. But they replaced him digitally every scene. Wow. She was never in the same room with any of the other actors.
Wow.
And they just digitally replaced him. It was crazy. So, but that kind of stuff. But again, those are also minor roles, and so it's not really going to affect. Ezra Miller's like the main freaking dude.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
So I get it. It's a frustrating situation. I don't want the actors, cast, and crew to suffer through that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think Ezra Miller should be punished, or at least taken care of in a way where like you clearly need help.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a whole thing. Dude, that's gonna be freaking it.
I love it, man.
For today, let's end with Ezra Miller. Yeah.
Let's
end with Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you for coming on the show and
thank you for having me, man.
Talking to me and sitting on my couch and stuff. And it's
hey, it's such a pleasure, man. This is great. I like
come back and do this again.
Oh, for sure. I'd love
fun.
that.
I think this is the longest podcast I've ever. 2 hours and 14 minutes. It's the longest podcast I've ever recorded.
Yeah, it flew by, man. It was great. I hope I felt the same way to you. Like it was a blast. I totally enjoyed it. If you guys are, I'm sure you guys are staying up to date with Jacob and everything that's going on. If you want to stay up to date with me, I'm gonna do a shameless plug. My Instagram is Mark Laird.
I'll link your stuff down in the bio.
Oh, sick. And I've got my own podcast called No Red Tape, if you want to follow me there. I kind of in the same vein, long-form conversation with a lot of different artists and people of that nature. And it's great. We get into a lot of fun topics. So yeah, that's about me. Hopefully me and Jacob will work on something soon. That'd be great.
I hope so too. Like I would love to come on anytime, and work with you on on more movie projects as well. Yeah. That was we need to do that.
For sure.
Dude, thank you again for coming on. Yeah, I got nothing else to say, so let's end this here. Ernesto, my dude, roll those credits.